The Sharpshooters, Mark Shanowski and David Schuster, talk basketball.
If you had to have a best-case scenario for an offensive-minded philosophy, what would it be for the Bulls?
I would like to see them go to more of a motion offense kind of thing. Keep guys moving throughout the 24-second shot clock. All too often with a lot of NBA teams, not just the Bulls, they come down court, they run high screen and roll. They hope that they're going to get a switch and the guard can get into the paint, force a double team, and kick out to a three-point shooter. It almost becomes, it'll lull you to sleep because it's the same thing every time. High screen and roll, switch, kick out to the three-point line. I would like to see Lauri Markkanen get involved in screens off the ball where he can come and catch it, not only to catch and shoot, but also catch the ball in motion where he's coming off a screen. At 7'1", he's a pretty good ball handler. He can go right to the rim and maybe get more free throws this year. I think Lauri became very frustrated last season because the analytics, which Jim Boylan was very heavily influenced by, were saying that you need three-point shots, and he wanted to shoot 35 a game. And they almost became robotic in the way they were running their half court. I think that Billy Donovan will bring more motion. He's not going to tell people you can't shoot a 15-foot jumper, because I know Zach LaVine was kind of chafing at that. He felt like a very important part of his game was being taken away by the coaching staff. Well, now I think they'll have the green light to shoot those 15-footers, which I think will also open up more possibilities for Wendell Carter Jr., who, as we've talked about many times, was totally lost in this offense.
Yeah, it's insane. I've thought this forever and ever. To take away the mid-range game of any player who's a basketball player is just insanity to me. If you can make a two-point shot from 15 or 18 feet, but your three-point percentage is pretty low, why are you going to shoot the three-point shot and probably miss the rebound on top of it when you have a better chance of, connecting from two? It's never made any sense to me.
Yeah, everybody was trying to follow the strategy that the Houston Rockets brought in. And
have they won anything?
Yeah, they've been very successful during the regular season, but they haven't done much in the playoffs. It's just a copycat kind of league, and the Golden State Warriors were very successful shooting the three ball, but when you look at Golden State, they were much more than what the Houston Rockets were. Their offense had a lot more subtleties to it. They also were a very good defensive team, which the Houston Rockets weren't. So that was one of the reasons, besides the fact they had Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson, that they were winning championships. But their offense was much more than just kick it out to the three-point line. There was a lot more going on there.
Well, if you're going to follow the leader right now is the LA Lakers. You need to get two of the best three players in the world.
That always helps, yeah.
It does.
Sharpshooters with Mark Shanowski and David Schuster, only on the Bears Barroom Radio Network.
The following program is for mature audiences only. Football talk shows, most of them sound like this. Blah, 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 blah. Not this one. That's because it features the former director of college scouting with the Chicago Bears. He worked on the staff that drafted, the likes of Devin Hester, Olin Kreutz, Lance Briggs. He's the man who takes shit from absolutely nobody. He's Greg Gabriel. Gabriel joins longtime Chicago sports reporter David Schuster. And this is, accordingly, Gabriel Schuster Talk Bears.
And welcome into the latest edition of the Gabriel Schuster Podcast. I'm David Schuster, and that debonair man on my right on the screen. And I always do that to make him laugh a little bit. Of course, that's Greg Gabriel. And Greg, today, this is our second podcast of the week. The first one, we recapped the game last week. And today we're going to preview the upcoming Monday night game against the Minnesota Vikings at an empty Soldier Field. And it's another national game, Greg, and I fear when the Bears are on national TV, I cringe a little bit because...
You fear too much. I already told you.
Well,
it's a Bears win.
It's a Bears win.
It's a Bears win. Lock it up. It's done.
Okay, well, before we get into all the details...
You can attack me. If they lose Tuesday, you can attack me, but...
Trust me, I will.
I know you will. I feel pretty good about this one.
Tell me why.
Why? It's... Number one, home doesn't mean a lot right now in the NFL, but it is at home. It's going to be cold, and I don't want to hear, well, Minnesota's from Minneapolis. It's cold. No, they're not. They're a dome team. You put a dome team outside, and they don't play as good, especially when the weather gets real cold. And, they've played a little better the last couple of weeks, and Dalvin Cook has been great. but you still got Kirk Cousins playing quarterback, and I don't care what the numbers say. He stinks. And so I think the Bears defense is going to stop the run with Dalvin Cook, just like they did with Henry last week. So now the key is going to be they got to score against the Vikings, and the Vikings defense isn't like the Vikings defense has been the last few years.
All right, and you make all good, valid points, as you always do.
Okay, thank you. I'll see you later.
The way I look at it, though, is you have right now at least, I mean, if this game was 3 weeks ago, I probably agree with you across the board. But for me, you have two teams right now going in opposite directions. The Vikings, we both left them for like roadkill, dead on the side of the road a couple of weeks ago. But they have played well the last couple of weeks. And sometimes when teams find mojo, at least for a little bit, in my estimation, they run with it. So that's Minnesota as of right now. And as you mentioned, Dalvin Cook is just being great, and we'll talk about him in a second also. On the other hand, the Bears have dropped 3 in a row. And honestly, Greg, I think they've looked worse each of the last 3 weeks than the preceding week. So if I take a look at one team rising and one team going down, I don't know. That's just the way I sort of look at this.
Here's one thing, and to me it's a key, and I didn't bring it up in our little pre-show talk, but I think that Nagy's given up the play calling duties. It's my gut feeling for this game. And last week he said, after the game, or it might have been early in the week in a presser, he said, if I do it, we're not going to announce it. Okay, so now what does that do? The Vikings don't have a clue who's going to be calling plays. Is it going to be the OC? Is it going to be the quarterback coach, or is it going to be Nagy? And they don't have if it's the OC, they don't know how he's going to call the game. So all the tendencies that you have with Nagy as the coach go out the window, because it's going to be a different guy calling the plays. Yeah, the play structure is the same, but it's how the plays are going to be called.
Well, for me, you know what's the same, Greg? It's the personnel. And that
the offensive line sucks.
Yeah, and the quarterback is average at best.
I think he's better than that. I just don't think he's been given a chance because of the problems with the offensive line. But it's who's going to be playing this week on the offensive line, and I don't think we know that. I mean, we looked at the injury list yesterday, and it was about a mile long. We're doing this. It's noon. We're not going to know until 4:00 what the injury list looks like today. So we don't know who's going to be playing on the offensive line on Monday, and that is a big concern.
We also don't know who's going to be running the football, to be honest with you, and we'll talk about David Montgomery in a second. We're going to hear, during the midst of this podcast, we're going to hear from Nick Foles, we're going to hear from Cordero Patterson, who might be your running back come Monday night.
I hope not.
Well, yeah, we both do, because
I'd rather go with Null. And Null did not carry the ball really the other day, but he caught the ball really well out of the backfield and had some positive plays. But I think even though he doesn't have that explosive speed that Patterson has, he's more instinctive runner. He can pick and slide better, and he's going to get you some positive yards. He's not going to break the big play. That's never going to be his game. But you got to think about the nickel and dime, and that's what the Bears got to do.
Yeah. All right. We're going to hear from Foles. We're going to hear from Patterson. We'll also hear from Matt Nagy. I also want to talk about, of course, like we always do on these second podcasts of the week, we'll run down the schedule upcoming for the weekend, and we'll talk a lot about college football, which is sort of hanging by a thread, to be honest with you, Greg, also. But as we always do on this preview of the upcoming game, we start with the opponent, and that's the Vikings. And like I said, a couple of weeks ago, the Vikings were sort of left for dead. I mean, they made a trade. They had some people there go down for the season on the defensive end of the football, but they've played better, I guess, for the last couple of weeks. We start with the quarterback, and I know what you already think of Kirk Cousins. You say he stinks, and overall, I would agree with you, but he's one of those quarterbacks, Greg, like a lot of these guys, he's up and he's down. He's more down than he's up. unless you talk about his bank account, that's always up because he got so much money from the Vikings. But taking a look at his numbers, he's 137 of 209. That's 66%, 15 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He's been sacked 10 times. He's got a QB rating of 97.7.
I got here sacked 16 times.
16 times?
Yep.
Okay. You're right. I can't read my own handwriting. I'm
Okay.
getting blind. I probably need cataract surgery at some point. Anyway, 16 times. You're right. He's not a mobile quarterback. And much like, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you want to have him play terrible? Put pressure on him.
Like every week.
The Bears do that. We can't take the defense has been very good all season as far as creating pressure on the opposing quarterback. And I think, that's going to be one of the keys of this game.
Okay, I even remember when he was in Washington, he was sort of the same thing. He was just one of these up and down kind of quarterbacks. Let's just say when he is up, what are his strengths?
He's accurate. He's a good short to mid-range thrower. He actually can be accurate on the deep ball. He's got good, not great arm strength. But now when you look at the receiving end, their leading receiver yardage-wise is a rookie, Justin Jefferson, and then you got Adam Thielen. They got rid of Diggs. He's tearing it up with the Buffalo Bills now in the AFC. And, I think the Bears' corners are going to be able to handle Jefferson and Thielen.
All right, let's talk about those two guys. As you mentioned, Jefferson, he's got 34 receptions, just 3 touchdowns, but he's averaging like 18 and a half yards reception. So I don't know if that's yards after catches or what, but does he got speed? Is he the deep guy? Tell me more about this guy.
He's tall. He's got length. He's got decent speed. I mean, he's not a 4.3 guy, but he can run. And Thielen is, your consummate, you would say, overachiever, but you can't put that tag on him anymore because he's done it for too many years. He's been to the Pro Bowl. This guy, played in that Minnesota State League at one of these small Minnesota schools, came out of there as an undrafted free agent, and the guy's just been a great player ever since he's been with the Vikings, and he keeps getting better every year. He is the guy that you got to take out of the game. I would imagine that, if the Bears have their way, they got Kyle Fuller on Thielen most of the time, and then have the rookie Jalen Johnson on Justin Jefferson.
Thielen's got 7 touchdowns. Is he more the guy that Cousins looks to in the red zone?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, you look at the touchdown throws. Jefferson's got 3. Thielen's got 7. Kyle Rudolph, the big tight end, only has 1. Dalvin Cook only has 1. Dalvin Cook hasn't done a lot as a receiver. I mean, he's only got 16 receptions, and then the backup tight end, Irv Smith's got 13 receptions and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I was going to talk about their tight ends. It does, I haven't watched all their game film. You, I'm sure, have looked at more than I have. How much are they integrated into the offense?
Well, they're going to use a bunch of 2 tight ends. That's like everybody in the league is doing now. It's not going to be anything different than the Bears have seen all along. Kyle Rudolph, big, strong guy. He's been in the league now, 10 years? He's your consummate wide tight end. He's a good blocker. He's strong at the point of attack, where Irv Smith is the move guy. And you get him out, you play him in the slot, flexed out a little bit. He runs good routes. He's got good speed. He's good after the catch. Not as good a blocker as Kyle Rudolph is.
All right, Greg, so many things that we're going to still get to in this podcast. And if people have some questions, they can type them up on the screen and Aldo will let us know about them and we'll answer them towards the tail end of the podcast. But still, when we talk about the Vikings offensively, let's face it, it begins and ends with Dalvin Cook. I believe he now leads the NFL in rushing at 858 yards. In fact, he's got more yards rushing, Greg, than the entire Bears team. 858.
You could have said that last week with Henry, and they
which is true.
Him. Now, going before the Tennessee game, the Bears' run defense left a lot to be desired. It was very inconsistent. They were giving up, the runs in the middle of the field, and we all know what happens. They've been a bend, don't break. But last week, they went in there really with the idea of stopping Henry, and except for that 128-yard run or 26-yard run, they did stop him all game. And I think you're going to see much the same type of defensive operation this week as far as trying to stop Dalvin Cook.
Okay, well, tell us why Cook has been as good as he is. He's averaging 6 yards a carry. That's pretty freaking good.
He's slippery. He's elusive. He's instinctive. For a guy that's not the biggest guy in the world, he's strong. He's strong after contact. Very good in space. Sees the cutback lanes. You can't just hope that it's a one-on-one situation and you're going to get him, because he's going to win at that. You got to have people around him and make the tackle, and you can't let him slip the tackles.
And they do use him a little bit out of the backfield in throwing to him, but not really that much. That's not his bread and butter.
No, he's 2 catches a game.
All right, so let's talk about the Vikings defensively. And as we mentioned earlier, they have lost a couple of players, one from trade, one from injury, in their defensive line from the beginning of the season. But I think when you take a look at their defense, Eric Hendricks, is that how you say his name? He's having a hell of a season. Kendricks? Okay, he's got 84 tackles at the linebacker. Linebackers, let's face it, they lead the teams, every team, I think, linebacker leads the teams in tackles.
The way defenses are set up, they're supposed to. Here's the thing, David, and I talked to a guy, former pro scout, who's done a lot of work on the Vikings the other day. So let's go back a few weeks, and Danielle Hunter goes on IR, and then they trade a guy that they had just traded for, and Ngakoue, that they got at the end of the preseason from Jacksonville. Well, we're thinking, okay, who do they got as a pass rusher? Well, the Northwestern player, and I might say his name wrong, Odenigbo, Ifeadi Odenigbo, he's got 2.5 sacks, but there's another player, and he's a rookie or a second-year player, DJ Wanham out of South Carolina, who has really taken over from where Ngakoue was, and he's got 2 sacks and little playing time, but he's a guy that I've been told that you got to watch, because he's got some traits, and he's a guy that could come on.
First of all, I will never correct you on any pronunciation of anybody's name, because I have butchered more names over all these years than anybody in this city, so I will never correct you on that. But, furthermore, in their defense, and this is really interesting, Greg, they do have 6 interceptions. That's not really a high number to begin with.
No.
But none of their cornerbacks have interceptions. Eric Wilson leads the team at the linebacker position with 3. The safeties have the other ones, I believe, but their cornerbacks.
Harrison Smith has 2. You go down the line, none, which tells me go after their corners.
Absolutely. But it also tells me the same thing we talked about earlier in the week. Why don't cornerbacks look for the goddamn ball when it's up in the air? I don't understand.
Well, they're coached to do that. If they don't, and here's the funny thing: they got rid of one of their best players. They let leave for free agency. Now he's playing for the Colts and playing damn good football. And when he was a high draft choice for him before. Speaking of, I'll take the Colts against the Titans when we get to that game. By the way,
that's great since the game was played last night. I love guys like you who predict the past.
I think they're going to win 34-17.
You're right. Yeah. Well, let's go to Vegas. And one more thing on the Vikings before we talk about the Bears. Their kicker is Dan Bailey. Do you realize he's only attempted 8 field goals in 8 games so far? He's 6 of 8.
The Viking offense, except for the last 2 games, has been non-existent.
Right.
So really, everything is. You're going to see what they've done the last couple of weeks. The big surprise game last week, they played Detroit. We know that doesn't count, at least between you and I, because we both hate Detroit. But the week before, they go into Lambeau and they beat Green Bay very handedly. Now, whether Green Bay was looking past that game and it was your typical trap game for them, who knows? But they got their ass handed to them, and that can be scary. But my gut feeling is that this is going to be the bounce back game for the Bears, and they're going to shut up people for 6 days, and then if they don't win the next week, we're going to be back on them again.
No question. All right, let's talk about the Bears now. And we'll start with Nick Foles. Here's his numbers overall. He's 187 of 285, much like Kirk Cousins, same percentage, 66% passing. He's got 10 touchdowns. He's got 7 interceptions. He's been sacked 16 times as well. His QB rating is 83.8. What do you want to say about Nick Foles?
nothing that we haven't already said has been hot and cold. And when he's hot, he's real hot. Is it all his fault? No. We've talked about the play calling. I think some of they've done some things that I thought they should have done, and that we've seen it. It just, they can't put it together drive after drive. We talked about they got to throw more on first down, just those short throws, so that because teams were expecting them to run on those early downs and taking that away from them. And now you get off schedule and you get into 2nd and 9, 2nd and 8, and you're not going to win that way. It makes it gives the defense the advantage. So what did the Bears do? They were throwing more. You were seeing more 2nd and 5, 2nd and 6. Okay, you can win that way. You got to still see that on a more consistent basis.
All right, we're going to hear from Foles in just a second here, but I mean, this is a game with two quarterbacks that are hot and cold. Now, for me, Cousins is hot and cold game to game. Foles is hot and cold from literally quarter to quarter sometimes, or possession to possession.
I think they're similar, but I like Foles more than I like Cousins.
Well, he's got a Super Bowl ring, so you have to like him more.
And if our buddy Mike McCartney's listening, I love Cousins, but because he's his agent.
All right, yes.
I can't. We've talked about it before. Every day there are tweets going to Mike McCartney.
I saw it again today.
Oh my God, they're hilarious. So some guy sends him a tweet and he goes, "Coach, you better be working hard on this bye week." And he says, "I'm going to be in Chicago."
I saw that. That is great. All right, let's hear from Nick Foles, because he was asked, how much does he trust this offense overall? Maybe this goes hand in hand with who's going to be calling the plays. And does he trust the players to run the plays? Here's Nick Foles.
That's something there's been so many moving parts and so many new pieces. We continue to build that trust every single day. And especially through the trials that we're going through these last couple of weeks. We're not where we want to be, but we're improving every single day. And that's just, and that's where trust is created by going out there and practicing, going through it together, communicating to where we know where we're going to be, we know what we're doing, and that we care about one another in the huddle. So I say we're continuing to build that trust and I think once we really get to that level of extreme trust and extreme energy, that's where everything starts to come to life.
What's interesting, Greg? I don't know what his ultimate career path is, and he's been in the league for a long time. But I'm going to predict you right now, Nick Foles will be one of those quarterbacks who goes into the broadcast booth when he's done playing.
He's a well-spoken guy. He's not. I don't think he's very calm when he speaks. He's not outspoken type of guy. And is he trying to win over the people he's talking to? Probably. But, I get the impression that he believes what he's saying. So, you can tell when somebody's full of it. He doesn't talk like he's full of it.
No, actually, I think he's genuine. I do believe him as well. All right, running the football, David Montgomery, of course, leads the team, 472 yards, 3.6 per carry. The Bears as a team, only 741 yards. And, we don't know. The injury report, we know he didn't practice yesterday. He's still, I'm sure, in concussion protocol. If all goes well, he'll be out of it by the end of the week. But something tells me, Greg, the way he ran off the field, not only was it the concussion, it looked like he banged up his shoulder. That's why it was hanging pretty low. So who knows what else is going on with him. If I had to hazard an early guess right now, I'm going to venture to say that he probably will not play on Monday night, but who knows?
Well, here's the thing, though, David. If he clears protocol and he's got a bad shoulder, they got to report it. I mean, they get fined a huge amount of money,
right?
If they don't. So there isn't so far on the injury report, we haven't seen anything as far as shoulder. Now, we talked about it Monday. Could have gotten a little stinger, on that hit, and that, sure. I mean, we just don't know. So that's the thing. I just don't want to throw a dart at the wall until we know something definitive.
All right, so let me ask you the question. If he's in concussion protocol, but he still does have a problem with his shoulder, do they not have to signify that he's, got an injured, any kind of injury?
I think that, unless that's a real bad concussion, he should be there's very few guys that go past 5, 6. I mean, if you get hurt on a Monday night, generally speaking, and you're playing on Saturday, then or rather Sunday, you might miss that game. But, in the case of A-Rob got hurt on a Monday night with a concussion, and he played the following Sunday. It's got to be really bad to miss the following week. And he's got an extra day, being that it's a Monday night game.
All right, if he doesn't play, and you said, well, you hope not, Cordero Patterson very well could get the bulk of the calls out of the backfield. And he was asked earlier this week, how concerned is he if Montgomery is not able to play?
It's next man up mentality. Next man up lead. I mean, we hate for anybody to go down, but that's just what it is, man. And I've been in this league a long time to see some guys go down and some guys just step up, and they're waiting on this opportunity their whole life. So, we got great running backs, man. So, that's how I feel about my team. I don't feel like we going to struggle. So, hopefully we just go out and just handle our business, get the W.
Greg, he has not
that
run.
One was breaking up, so I didn't hear everything he said, but I did hear him say it is what it is. I've been in this league a long time.
Bottom line is, he says next man up, and whatever. I was going to say,
I think we're going to see if that's the case, and and Montgomery can't go. Back to what I said at the beginning of the show, I think we're going to see more of Nall. Because don't forget, we saw a lot of him in the fourth quarter last week, and I think we're also going to see Artemis Pierce.
Okay. I was going to say this about Patterson. Obviously, he has not run the football well out of the backfield, the opposite of great. But he's got great hair. Did you notice that in the video clip? And I'm just wondering, Greg, have you ever braided your hair like that?
Oh, yeah. All this?
Oh, that's the first time I've seen you without a hat. I didn't know that. I'm just teasing. All right.
I haven't had hair since I've been about 25.
I'm sure you had it halfway down your back when you were able to, right?
Not halfway down, but it was down to here.
Oh, God, I got to see those pictures. I'm sorry.
I got some.
My hair was pretty long once upon a time, too. Allen Robinson leads the Bears in receptions, 57. Roquan Smith leads the Bears in tackles with 82. The Bears do have 20 sacks, so obviously they have been getting to the quarterback. And listen, that is the MO, like it is each and every week, and you're 100% correct about that, Greg. Every time the Bears have gone against a quarterback, they have put pressure on him. I can't honestly say that there's been a quarterback who's really had a great game against the Bears, even though the Bears have lost 4 games.
No, the defense has played good. If the offense played half as good as the defense, this team would have only lost maybe 1 game. So, I mean, that's the key to this team. This is a championship level defense that can take any, good team to a Super Bowl. But the offense sucks right now, and until that gets fixed, and they've got some playmakers. They got to fix the offensive line. The offensive line is subpar, and I think the play calling is off.
Well, you use the word playmakers. They have playmakers also on the defensive side of the ball also, Greg. But surprisingly, the Bears have only turned the ball over 9 times, 5 interceptions, 4 fumble recoveries. It's a far cry from the old Lovie-Smith defenses where they really went into the game trying to get 2 or 3 turnovers, making it easier for their offense. Do you see anything that they can do to improve in that, or is that just sort of happenstance?
I think it's more happenstance, and don't forget we've had 3 that have been called back because of penalty, 3 more.
That's true,
and a couple of those have been touchdowns. So the plays are there. I'd like to see Jalen Johnson get an interception, but even when I go back and look at his college tape, he makes plays on the ball, but he's never had a lot of interceptions. I just hope he's not one of those guys who can't catch a cold in winter.
Yeah, well, I certainly can. Caro Santos, 15 of 17 field goals. He's perfect on extra points, 17 of 17. This is going to be a low-scoring game for me, Greg, and I'm sure the weather will certainly, play into that as well. I got Minnesota winning this game 17-16.
I'm gonna say 17-14 Bears. I agree. It's going to be low scoring, and watch they'll put up 28 or 31 or something. The weather's going to be a factor in that it's going to be cold. It might even be in the high 20s.
And windy.
Based on the preliminary forecast, but it's not going to be wet. I still think, you put Minnesota out in the cold, and I don't care if they're from the farthest point north, and as far as NFL teams, they're a dome team, and dome teams don't like playing in the cold.
Okay, well, two of the most ridiculous words I've ever heard in sports used over all these years is bear weather. And boy, did that come back to bite them so many times in playoff scenarios over the years. So, I don't know. These guys are all used to playing in different kind of conditions. And I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, this is the first of 3 straight division games for the Bears. This will be the 3rd straight division game for the Vikings. So let's hear from Matt Nagy here. He was asked, how important is this game? How important is this stretch of the season? And is a loss like the ultimate doomsday scenario for the Bears?
No, it's not for us, because for us, we go week to week, and we're in week, heading into week 10 right now. We're 5-4. We understand that we have 7 games left, and we're at a position here where 5 of them are in a division. We talk about how important the division games are. And for us, we talk about the biggest part is control what you can control. And right now we put ourselves in this position, being in 5-4. And so we got to win this week and then worry about what happens in the bye week and then what happens after that. And I think for us, probably the biggest thing, Mike, is that we've been through this last year where it's a similar feeling when you lose, several games in a row. And so that kind of calloused us for where we're at right now and how we're handling this. And I think that's what it's been interesting for me, is to see how our guys are reacting to it. And they're doing good. And I know that they're hungry. This is not something where their attitudes are changing for the negative. We know that we have each other in this building, and that's where we're at right now.
Hey, Greg, wasn't Matt Nagy a young-looking guy when he first came to Chicago?
Yeah, I told you, it looks like he's aged 10 years in the 3 years he's been here. But that's what happens when you're a head coach.
Help me out with this, because you've been in Hallis Hall, you've been in all the different facilities, with the Giants and other facilities as well. Tell us what it's like for a coach. And do they sleep there overnight on a cot? Do they go home for 2 hours and come back? What is it like for a head coach?
It's not just a head coach. It's any coach. It's the ultimate grinder business. And I think it's just the way that people who work in the business have been brought up. And if you're not willing to grind, you're not going to succeed. And, my thinking is a little bit different. It's how do you use your time? It's not spending 14 hours in the building. If you only spend 10 hours in the building, it's how you use that 10 hours. You follow what I'm saying?
Sure.
And I think so. Sometimes you can overwork and overthink things. But at the same time, when you're a coach and you're trying to put a game plan together, you only got so many days to do it. So it's tough work. 6 months of the year, it's really tough work for the coaches. Do they spend the night? Hey, there's probably a few guys that do, and there's guys that are going to be up and in the office at 5 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning to get a workout in, and they try to do it. That's just the way they've been brought up in the business, and that's the way it is. Is there a more efficient way of doing it? There might be, but guys who didn't think that grinding was important, found their way out real quick as far as the NFL. And I can use one example of Steve Spurrier. Steve wanted to be on the golf course every afternoon, and he found a way to be on the golf course every afternoon. His team's lost too. So it's just the way it is. You got to work. If you want to win, you got to work.
Oh, Steve Spurrier should run for president, then he can spend as much time as he wants on the golf course. All right, never mind that. Let's go around the NFL, Greg, because honestly, I took a look at the whole schedule here. I can honestly say there's not one game that I'd want to watch this weekend. This is just like such a matchup of bad against good teams, or for lack of a better term, or bad against bad.
Did that purposely because the Masters is going on this weekend?
Oh, wow, what a conspiracy idea. I don't know.
Well, they've changed the games. They put in a lot of the games because, we're past daylight savings. And so a lot of the games are being played at the Eastern time, 4 o'clock hour. So 3 o'clock our time,
right?
Because the Masters is supposed to be over. There's very few games being played at noon.
Yeah, there's only 5 games on the early side. You're absolutely right. All right, let's go through them because honestly, usually there's like 1 or 2 or 3 games. Oh, I can't wait to see. These are 2 playoff-bound teams, and they're going to face each other. Not this week. This is like garbage against garbage. All right, Jacksonville and Green Bay. Jacksonville 1-7, Green Bay 6-2. This, unless something strange happens, this is a walkover game.
Yeah, that's Green Bay show up. Even though I want Jacksonville to win.
Okay. Washington 2. Go Ron Rivera. Washington 2-6 against our favorite team, Detroit 3-5.
I'll go with Ron.
I hope so, but something tells me.
Where's that one at?
It's at the Ford Dome in Detroit.
Could go the other way, but I just hope Ron does us a favor.
Okay, that'll probably be the game on TV here locally on Sunday because the Bears aren't playing. But you know what? I might go clean my garage during that game. I'm not sure. Houston
I'm gonna watch the Masters.
That's right. I forgot. That cinches it. I'm watching the Masters too. By the way, Dustin Johnson making another run here early in round 2. Houston.
I haven't seen anything done because I've had therapy going on all morning. And by the way, if I bother you guys because I'm moving around a lot, it's because I can't sit still. My leg gets too tight.
Quite all right. We understand. You're still bionic to us beforehand and afterwards. Houston 2-6, Cleveland 5-3. Oh, thank you so much.
Get that off of there.
Actually, that's better than some of these games, though. Houston 2-6, Cleveland 5-3.
Ugh. Cleveland.
Okay, I agree. This might be a battle for first place. Philadelphia 3-4-1. The Giants 2-7. God,
where's the game at?
It's in New Jersey.
It's in New Jersey. Well, I even though I picked the Giants last week, I was hoping Washington could get that one, and it was a close game. You know what? The Giants are coming on a little bit. I'm gonna, even though Philly's probably got the best team in a terrible NFC East. Let's go with the Giants. No, why we want the Giants? Because we want the best team to have a losing record.
I think ultimately, when it's all said and done, that whoever wins that division will have a losing record. But you're right. If Philadelphia wins that this game on Sunday, they're at least at 500. All right, here's another one. Tampa Bay coming off just a miserable performance on Sunday night. They're at Carolina. Tampa 6-3, Carolina 3-6.
And McCaffrey's not playing, and that's an important part. I'm going to go with, even though I hate Tampa and I want to see him lose, I'm going to go with Tampa.
I'll agree with that. Denver 3-5, Vegas 5-3.
Vegas.
Okay, I'll agree with that. The Chargers 2-6, Miami 5-3. At least this game's got a couple of young quarterbacks that you want to see how they're progressing. So this would be a game that I might actually want to watch a little bit.
Miami can't take it away from them. They're
5-3
football.
Yeah, they are.
And the clock management, as good as Justin Herbert has been, the defense isn't that good, and their clock management isn't that good. Could end up costing the head coach his job, but that's another game. I hope the Chargers win, but I think the other team's going to win.
Okay. There's only 2 games that have the 2 teams playing with winning records. These are these next 2 games. Buffalo 7-2, Arizona 5-3.
Arizona, I think, is one of the most overrated teams in the National Football League. Game is out in Arizona. Mm-hmm. That's an advantage for Arizona, but I got to go with my hometown guys.
Of course you do. Seattle 6-2, the Rams 5-3. This is a big game, at least in that division.
Boy, Seattle looked awful last week in Buffalo, so I'm going to go with the Rams. Buffalo forced 4 turnovers, so I'm going to go with the Rams.
I'm going to go with Seattle. Wilson very rarely has 2 bad games in a row, and the Rams, I'm just not impressed by them. I wasn't impressed by them when the Bears lost to them, and I certainly wasn't impressed with them last week either. So I'm going to go with Seattle. San Francisco 4-5, New Orleans 6-2.
Oh, right now it's New Orleans.
Yeah, I think New Orleans
no questions.
I think they win that game big, actually. Cincinnati 2-5, Pittsburgh 8-0. I mean, can the Steelers run?
That's a given.
Yeah, can the Steelers? Can they run the table?
No.
No. Okay.
That's too hard for any team.
No, they're halfway there. Baltimore 6-2, New England 3-5.
Baltimore.
And that does it for and then of course the Bears game. We both have our picks. Low scoring. You're going with the Vikings, or you're going with the Bears. Excuse me. I'm going with the Vikings. I want to talk about college football also, Greg. The Southeast Conference. We talked about this going into the season. They got the jump on everybody by starting like a few other conferences, but right now they're really getting hit hard by the COVID pandemic. And 4 of their games have been canceled for this upcoming Saturday. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think the colleges are overdoing it. You get one guy test positive, and they like kill the whole team. Throw that guy into isolation and the close contacts into isolation and play the game. It's. That's my thinking. I mean, I just think some of it's overreaction. It's not football, but the Ivy League's already canceled all winter spring sports for the league. That's ridiculous. But what do we do?
I don't know. In the Big Ten, Ohio State, their game was canceled against Maryland for the same reason.
Same thing. There's one guy on the Maryland team that tested positive.
Okay.
So they cancel a whole game.
All right. So there's been talk because of so many cancellations already in college football that they might have to push the whole playoff structure back. Obviously the semifinal games, and I don't know which games they are on New Year's Day, and then the championship is like about a week and a half later. But they're talking now if they have to keep canceling more games, they might have to push the whole thing back. They're talking about potentially, not etched in stone, obviously, that the whole thing might have to be pushed back into February, which is sort of strange.
I don't know if all the way to February, but if you got to add a couple of weeks, part of it, TV plays into this. And, does TV have that open time for the college football game? Because how that whole thing works. It's generated around those guys. So if those guys have the airtime available for college football and they push it back 2 weeks, they push it back 2 weeks.
Okay, well, one game that we do know is going to be played this weekend is Notre Dame coming off that big win against Clemson. Kudos to them. They're at Boston College. Boston College actually gave Clemson a scare a couple of weeks ago themselves. So Boston College is not a slack team by any stretch. They have a winning record at 5-3. What do you anticipate in that game on Saturday? It's at Boston College.
Well, the quarterback for Boston College was like the number 3 quarterback at Notre Dame last year, and he quit. So I think there's some people at Notre Dame that want to kick his ass a little bit. And I think Notre Dame, could be a, quote, trap game for Notre Dame. I don't think so. I think that they're playing good football, and they really played. That was a great game. That was you could put that game last week into the instant classic type game, because it went into double overtime before Notre Dame pulled it out. But I even though the game is at Boston College, that not going to be anybody in the stands. I think Notre Dame wins. They got the better football team.
I don't believe in trap games in college football, unlike maybe on the NFL level, and maybe I don't believe them there either. But Notre Dame can't afford to lose this game because they're likely going to face. Yeah, they're likely going to face Clemson in the ACC championship game, and if they lose this game and then they lose another game potentially to Clemson in the championship game, that's 2 losses. They will not be a playoff team.
That's right. They have to run the table, and then I think regardless of what happens in the ACC championship game, they still, the loser still gets in to the playoff. But if either one of those teams loses another game along the way, then only one ACC team gets in.
Right. 100% agreed. All right, one more game in college football. Your old coach with the Bears, Lovie Smith with Illinois, they're 0-3. They're going against Rutgers 1-2. What do you see out of Illinois so far?
Rutgers has been playing good football. They're not winning a lot, but they've been playing, strong fundamental football. Lovey, I don't know if he gets his quarterback back. His quarterback's been out. If he gets his quarterback back, he's got a chance to win. If not, Rutgers. Schiano is trying to bring back the glory that Rutgers had when Schiano was there before. That might take a few years, and they were playing in the Big East when they were winning a lot of games under Schiano before. Now they're in the Big Ten. That's a entirely different league.
All right, let me just ask you. I think this is Lovey's 4th year now at Illinois.
Obviously, might even be his 5th.
Is it his 5th? Or time flies. Obviously, when he first came there, he inherited a bunch of young players from the previous regime. He's now got his own players, pretty much playing for him full time.
Yep.
Does he ever have a chance of having a winning program there, or is that just a bridge too far?
I thought when he went down there that. We all know Lovey, and I thought that he would be a stronger recruiter that he has proven to be, at the college level. He's coached at college before, so it's not like he didn't know what recruiting was all about. But as it comes out, Champaign is a tough place to go to. When you're competing against Columbus and Ann Arbor and stuff, it's not known as a strong football place. It's just a tough place to recruit to, and it should be strong where they are. You get a lot of these kids out of Illinois, Chicago, and stuff, but they're not. So it's been a long time since Illinois has been at the top of the Big Ten. It was Mike White when he was there. They had some pretty good teams, and that was 25 years ago. And since then, Zook was there. They were good for a couple of years, but it's hard. I think Illinois is just a tough place to recruit to.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. All right, I'm going to leave you with this, Greg, because there was a very historical thing that happened in sports earlier today, not in football, but in baseball, where the Miami Marlins became the first organization in North American professional sports to hire a woman to be in charge of everything, and that's Kim Ng, who's the general manager now for the Miami Marlins. Congratulations to her. Now, she was an intern with the White Sox going back about 15 plus years ago, so she's really worked her way up from the bottom to now being in charge.
Do you know her?
I know her just passing. Okay, that's it. Gotcha. But my question to you is, if it can happen in baseball, can it happen in football? Can you ever see the day where a woman is running the show? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people will say, well, she couldn't do any worse than Ryan Pace, in certain aspects. So, I mean, have you run across any women in your travels in professional football that you could see that happening?
They got to know personnel, and that's the tough thing. So right now, no, I don't think there are some younger women that are breaking into the sport on the scouting end. But, based on where they are, it's at least 15 years away.
15 more years before that ever becomes
at least.
Okay, so that means probably nobody who's in the sport right now, I'm guessing.
I'm saying some of these young people that have just came in, if they have the wherewithal to climb the ladder to get that far. But right now, what's her name? I mean, there was one person who was a president, and Amy Trask, who now works for CBS, and she was excellent. But she was president of the team and not a general manager. Now, Can you see another person being president? Yes, absolutely, without question. But their role is different than a general manager, especially in football.
Okay. Well, I just, it's really an historical story from earlier today because, kudos to her. And she's qualified. She was the assistant general manager, for what it's worth. Now we're sort of hopping sports here. She was the assistant general manager under Brian Cashman with the Yankees. That's how Derek Jeter came to know her extremely well. And Jeter, obviously down in Miami, and he's one of the main guys in their front office, and he hired her as their general manager. So kudos to him, kudos to her. And listen, there's so many qualified women in so many areas that it really doesn't surprise me, but it is a historical day for females in professional sports.
And all it means is that where she's the groundbreaker, there will be more. A lot of sports. It's who's it going to be, what's the franchise, and what's their background.
All right, hear your dog barking in the background, so I think he wants lunch.
Yep, probably.
And I'm going to go get my lunch too. So, Greg, we'll be back on Tuesday morning following the Monday night game. Oh, here's Aldo. Aldo's going to chip in maybe with some questions, Aldo?
Yeah, we promised people that we
Okay, sorry.
So let's do that.
Sure.
Let's see here. Greg, can you provide a scouting report on Lamar Miller?
No, not really. Because when you want to do a proper scout, what he was and what he is are two different things. And that's what I mean. What he was a tough inside runner, could break tackles, good after contact, not a breakaway guy, but had some long runs. What he is now, especially coming off a big injury, until you see him, no.
Yeah, he did not play at all in 2019 because of the ACL injury. So,
and that's a big injury. I mean, and we've talked about this with running backs before. When at a lot of positions in the NFL, when a guy starts to go downhill, it's gradual. With a running back, it's like falling off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be that difference can be from one season to the next. Until we see him live, we don't know what he is. When he was good, he was real good. But for him to be, to say he's going to be that same player coming off an ACL, I can't say that. And it's not like we had a preseason to watch.
Right. What about Artavius Pierce? Travis Dunaway wants to know what your thoughts are on that undrafted free agent pickup for the Bears is.
I liked him. He ran for around 900 yards at Oregon State. How about, Nall and Pierce were teammates at one time at Oregon State. He's probably 5'9" and a half. Stretch him out, he might make it to 5'10", 205. He can run now. He's a sub 4.5 guy. He's a better open field type guy, even though he's not a returner. Catches the ball pretty good, but he's got juice, and you get him in space, and he's a pretty good player. But he's not the guy that is gonna, be the tough inside runner that's gonna get you yards after contact.
Steven, who always attends our Draft on Tap show, he wants to get your perspective on any college prospect that the Bears fans should keep an eye on, particularly at the offensive tackle position. Anybody that you've started to look at, Greg?
I haven't spent that much time on it yet this year, so I can't really answer that, and I'm not just going to make up stuff to throw out right now. And part of it is just the way this college season is. Who's going to be in the draft, who isn't going to be in the draft. A month ago, the Big Ten, or 6 weeks ago, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 weren't even going to play. And now, the Big Ten has played 3 games and the Pac-12 has played 1 or 2. So we don't know that much about the pool.
Adeptus has a interesting philosophical question. So let's say you're unhappy with the Chicago Bears offensive line, like most fans are. How many people can you realistically think you can draft and could be starters in year one?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll go way back when I was working with the Giants. We drafted tackles in the first round and the second round. And they both started as rookies, and we were in the Super Bowl 2 years later with those guys. So it's happened in the league. If a guy's, you don't want 2 rookie tackles, but you can play with one and play. I mean, there's guys come in the league every year play, and they play good. But having 2 of them start at one time is tough.
And I'll leave you guys with this thought from Steven. He says Amy Trask can do a better job than Ted Phillips. So anyone want to defend Ted Phillips?
Well, that's throwing a dart at the wall. Amy Trask is a very qualified person. But if that was indeed the case and she did a good job with the Raiders, she'd still be working in the league, don't you think? And it's not like, she's like 65 years old. She's still a relatively young lady. So Instead she's working for CBS and doing some other things. Very knowledgeable person, good business person. Is she going to do better than Ted Phillips? His job is different. He doesn't have a whole lot to say about the product on the field, regardless of what people want to say. His job is to make money for the organization, and he's done a pretty good job at that.
All right, I guess that will wrap it up then, Greg, with all the questions. And again, we will be back Tuesday late morning, and we'll recap the game. And I hope it's a good game. I mean, more than anything else, I just hope it's a good game, because too many times, like I said right at the beginning of this podcast, on national TV, the Bears have laid an egg. And I just I pray it's a good game. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Louis Riddick is doing the game. Louis has always been kind of a Bears fan, and I worked with Louis, so I know Louis well. But he's jumping off the bandwagon a little bit, so that'll be interesting. How and Greasy's not going to say a good word, so screw whatever he says. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, great. You have yourself a healthy and safe weekend. Aldo as well, and we'll be back Tuesday. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you then.
You too, guys.
Thank you.